Oh my God, holy sh! That's the last time a dirty word will be bleeped. This episode contains language and content for adult ears. Listener discretion is advised.
We've talked a lot about religious deconstruction on this show, from various angles and perspectives. Today, we're talking with a social media influencer and thought leader on this very subject, and his story is unique. Raised in the church from a young age and battling with the deep knowledge that he was gay, this man pursued leadership roles and pastored a congregation, until the day he decided to live fully in his truth, and it all came crashing down on him. Now, he uses his story and his struggles to help others, especially from the LGBTQ+ community, to untangle their theology and reconnect with their inner divinity. His social media has so many followers. The majority of those, like us, admire his work. But as always, there are the trolls, who can't help but reach out to preach and condemn. The hard truth many of us have come to learn is that there's no hate like Christian love.
Trigger warning. Ready yourself, because now we're going there. Taboo topics are back on the table.
Welcome back, everyone, and welcome a guest that I have been a huge fan of for the last couple of years. Thank you so much for joining us. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Maeshiro. I'm based in Nashville, Tennessee at the moment. I spent a lot of my formative years in Redding, California, at a charismatic megachurch. That's where I got into ministry and started teaching at their ministry school and started traveling the world and teaching and training and started living the dream as a minister. And so I came out in 2020, and now all of my work is dedicated toward helping queer people survive and recover from everything I left behind.
I absolutely love what you do. I love your messaging. We've been fans of yours for several years since you've been very outspoken. And the other thing I'll just say, I'll brag for you, for somebody with a pretty decent sized following, you actually interact. Like, we comment on a lot of things and you're good, even if it's just a simple thing, you're good about interacting. I suck at that and I don't have a huge following. So kudos to you on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I know a little bit about your story, but I don't know all of the gritty details. You have an interesting story. I think you have, sadly, a story that is it should be more rare, but it's not, in the sense of the way that the church reacts to the LGBTQ+ community. We've talked to other people in previous episodes about this kind of stuff. I'll say what you have that not everyone has is a beautiful evolution in spirituality. And that's why I've been very interested to talk to you. So let's dig in.
Yeah.
What is Mike's story?
So I was raised evangelical. I was 4 when my parents got saved. And they took me to Sunday school, and that's where I, for the first time ever, learned about God and hell and forgiveness and salvation and crucifixion and eternal damnation. It was a lot to take in at 4. And I got saved because I didn't want to burn in eternity, right? Like, apart from my family. Anyway, so then I got put in private school, and my teachers had paddles. It was kind of like being at a children's concentration camp a little bit. It was terrifying.
Sorry to laugh at that, but I love the way you just described it.
I don't remember what show I was watching recently, like a couple weeks ago. I was watching, I think it was Andor, season 1. And he's like going through the prison section of that story. And I was like, why does this feel weirdly familiar randomly? And I was like, this reminds me a lot of my private school upbringing. When I was 10, I realized consciously that I was gay. And I was like, oh God, that's like one of the worst things I could discover about myself. It was a dreadful experience because I learned before that moment what gay people were and how we were supposed to see and treat them, right? They were like, I'm going to use this biblical evangelical term. They were lepers, in terms of like how we related to them. You don't touch them. You don't talk to them. You don't associate with them. They're not inheriting the kingdom. They're abominations. They're perverts, whatever. They're blamed for why America is falling, all this stuff. So I knew all that before I realized that I was gay. And I think there's something really harmful and abusive about that already, right? So I went deeply into the closet, and then so I like had to memorize passages of the Bible to get a grade, and like morality was very dictated, and the Bible was deeply ingrained in me, and I learned all the right answers and became a very good Christian. I was so informed on evangelical doctrine. And then when I was 18, I was getting kind of bored. I was like, I think this is like fine. It's not great. Like, what are we really offering people? Why are we telling them to give up all this other exciting parts of their life to be part of this? Like, that was my like existential like questioning at the time. I had this like, I don't know, random profound experience at church. Um and it took me some years of like evaluating some of these experiences to really figure out some of the cause and effect that I think caused this. But a woman in my adult Sunday school class shared, they were asking for testimonies from the week, and she shared that a gay man was playing the lead role in a Hollywood film, like a Christian movie. Maybe Hollywood's not the right. I don't know if it was Hollywood. It was a big movie. It came out in theaters. Tip of the Spear, End of the Spear, Jim Elliott.
Just the tip of the spear.
It was a movie about a missionary to like, the Amazon or something. And the main character was being played by a gay actor, and he came out in the middle of the production of the film, and then the team prayed, and they said they felt like God wanted him to play the role. And that's what she shared in Sunday school. And it was really awkward. And it was crickets after she shared it. No one knew how to respond.
So she was celebrating not the fact that they tried to convert a gay man. They didn't try to convert him. They were actually accepting of him. And you had a gay person carrying the torch of Christ.
Right. Yes, literally. That's what she was sharing. And I'd known this woman struggled with same-sex attraction. So it was awkward. I was so uncomfortable. I was like, why is she doing this? She knows this is not going to be received well, but she shared it anyway. Anyway, by the time I left Sunday school and got to the adult service of our church, I was in a different state. I did not know how to exist with what was happening in my body and being in that environment. So we start singing the normal church songs that we sing every Sunday, and this time everything is different. Like I all of a sudden have no defenses, or like, I don't know, I just felt very susceptible and exposed, and every song we sang I just began to weep. And the language I would use, so whoever's listening, feel free to filter this however you need to, but like in my understanding of my journey, I met God that morning. Like I encountered a being of immense depth and profundity and love and humility. I remember just being really profoundly shaken by how gentle and kind and massive this being was. I just sobbed. I really didn't have like a grid for how to cope with this. And then 8 months later, it happened again at a young adults thing I was going to on Friday nights, the church thing. We were singing worship songs, and it happened again. But in that experience, I heard who I understand God to be tell me that they wanted me to be gay. And I knew that God wasn't allowed to say that to me, right? Like I knew what the Bible said. I knew what my pastors believed. I knew what my parents taught. Like that wasn't acceptable. It wasn't biblical. So I knew if I told anybody what I experienced that night, they would think that I was listening to a demon or being led astray or whatever.
Right.
But I knew what happened to me. I was like, it changed my life. Anyway, so over the next 14 years, I'll have probably 8 or 9 more experiences like that, where I continued to experience this profound presence of love and acceptance and care and power. And they would continuously affirm me as a gay man. And I would benefit from that in my inner world of just feeling loved and seen and valued, and yet also remained closeted, because I went into ministry and I knew how gay people were supposed to behave in that world. You were supposed to erase yourself. You weren't allowed to be gay. You weren't allowed to exist, right?
Was your decision to go into ministry because of that? Was it connected to that in a way, or was it just because of the overwhelming connection that you felt with God?
Yeah, I think my decision to go into ministry was 2 parts. I think I almost want to say subconsciously, but it wasn't that sub. I think my mom groomed me to view being a pastor or public speaker in the church as like the highest form of success I could achieve in my life. I did not think about that until I was in my 30s, but I think that was a factor in my own formation. Then the other part of this, on my own emotional journey and kind of learning into my adult life, I was like, if I'm going to give my energy and time and talent and life to anything, I want to help people know and understand God the way I do. Like, I want people to experience this kind of liberation and authenticity. So I think it was those two things together that compelled me to do that. Yeah. So through several dramatic spiritual experiences, I ended up landing at a place called Bethel Church in Redding, California. Um, because the church that I had been going to didn't really have answers for me. There wasn't a lot of metaphysical, supernatural, there wasn't room for those kinds of experiences. And I was having several of them and I didn't know how to make sense of them. Bethel is all about that stuff. So anyway, I ended up at Bethel and went through ministry school there. I got kicked out of second year on the last day because a friend of mine outed me. And that was traumatic. It was not handled well. It took me months to recover from that. But then the leadership who made that decision apologized to me and gave me my diploma. And then shortly after that, I started working at the church that the school was associated with. And then I started teaching at the school. And then I started like taking interns and leading trips and then traveling and teaching. And, that all took off. All the while having these profound experiences with God, affirming me as a gay person.
Were you ever speaking to homosexuality or any of those things?
No, I avoided the subject as much as I could.
Okay. I'm actually happy to hear that because
Same.
we've all heard the stories where, they're preaching against it hardcore because of that internal struggle, which you of course empathize with those people as well. It sucks regardless.
Yeah, I don't know if I empathize with those people, actually. Let me take that back.
Okay, no. That's fair.
Yeah. I mean, as a gay man who went through that, I actually feel very strongly and differently about that choice than empathy. I don't feel empathy for them.
I wouldn't say I condone it. I think it's horrible, but it's understandable when you hate yourself.
Yeah.
But look, that's just my opinion. You don't have to.
Right. Listen, you know what? I think there is some empathy there for that. Yes. I think I know some people who are still actively doing that, who are straight up gay, and it infuriates me. And so I think my empathy that I think does exist is overshadowed in this particular area with fury.
There's also a statute of limitations for that empathy, I think.
Yeah, right. So I think in theory, totally, I absolutely get it and empathize with that experience and that journey. But when it's lived out and you watch these people refuse to acknowledge any kind of accountability or, anyway, that's a different story. So anyway, through all that, I think I mentioned maybe 4 or 5 times while I was speaking publicly, like because people might have asked me in a Q&A, like, what about the spirit of homosexuality, right? It would have been how that was phrased in the world I was in. And I would have conceded that the Bible didn't affirm or celebrate gay people, that it wasn't God's design, that wasn't his highest and best for them. I would have been like gentle in my messaging and acknowledging the difficulty or struggle for those people, all the while cosplaying as a straight man as I'm doing that, right? So I think that did happen a few times, but it only ever happened when it was imposed on me. I never went out of my way to talk about that subject. I wanted to avoid it like the plague. And then in 2020, right before the pandemic hit, I was watching a Taylor Swift documentary. And she went hard on advocating for queer people and just affirming the validity of the queer community and that the rights that we deserved. And I don't know, there's something about that moment. I was at a certain point in my own journey and process where it hit me, but it hit me in a place that I would categorize in my journey as spiritual conviction. I was like, something profound is happening right now. And then 2 weeks later, I had another one of those experiences with God, and 3 weeks later, another one. And then that one was the one that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And I just I couldn't stay in the closet anymore, especially with the platform that I had and the church that I was associated with. They were overtly anti-gay. So I had to make a choice, and it was the scariest thing I've ever done because I was about to lose everything. And so I had to choose between my authentic self and my sincerity and my relationship with God over the ministry and business and career and persona and reputation I had established. And I eventually finally chose to love myself. And that was the beginning of the end.
How did that process go?
It was dramatic. First of all, there's a lot of my own internal process. Like I had a lot of grief and sorrow I had to work through. I was preemptively grieving loss of so many things, and then also retroactively grieving all of the suppression and like self-abandonment and betrayal that I had subjected myself to for decades. That was really painful and scary, and it just kept coming in waves over months. I just like kept finding new things that my body had to grieve, and my inner child was like finally finding a way to express some of the stuff that I wasn't allowed to feel for so long. So that I felt like I was falling down a staircase and just gaining more bruises and cuts as I fell, and gaining momentum as it was happening. And then I started talking to people. So I started with some close friends and coming out to them, and they were all, so I would say, surprisingly supportive slash receptive to what I had to say. Now, granted, my understanding of like what a gay person is and deserves was not very well established at the time, so I didn't recognize some of the homophobia that was going on in that part of my journey. Thankfully, I think I'm glad I didn't. And then it came later where when I started doing research and learning and reading and just voraciously consuming new information around gay people and gay people in the Bible and gay people in theology and the history of queer people. I started, and then also just like justice work and, equity in this area. I just started developing an attitude of like, oh my God, I've been subjecting myself and accepting subpar treatment and classification, and that's not valid. That's not justified. Like, I don't have to live this way. This is crazy. And once that conviction started to click, I started pushing back pretty hard, and that's when I started losing friends, and people started having to distance themselves from me because I stopped saying the right things and started saying the wrong things. And then I finally decided to talk to some leadership at Bethel. I wanted to like let them know what was happening, because in my life and what my convictions were and how my attitude was changing, what my beliefs were now. And those conversations went, I want to say almost exactly like I thought they would, but some of them went a little different. Like one of the guys I talked to, he'd known me for over 10 years, and he was the poster child at Bethel for being an ex-gay man who now is married to a woman and has 4 kids and is living the dream of God healing someone of same-sex attraction. He was gay and just like talked about it in a different way, right? And so he was like a mentor to me at times. At the rare occasion that I would come to him and talk to him about my sexuality, he would like support me in that process of like being a second-class citizen in that environment. So I came to him and I told him everything that had changed. And as soon as he realized what I was saying, the change was immediate. It was shocking, like this wall. And his persona completely changed and never went back. And it was like 10 years of relationship and trust and mutuality was gone immediately. And I was so shocked and like disappointed and like angry. And when I left that meeting, I remember feeling deeply sad for him. I was like, there's like this weird grief that I didn't know how to name for him. I was like, your life is a trap, and I have become a threat to that trap that you are benefiting from, but also like dying because of, like, ugh. And I was so disappointed and then like really upset.
See, there's that empathy, right? You can be simultaneously so disappointed in somebody and hurt from somebody, but there's still that, like, that's what makes you a good human. That's what shows me that like you understand God, because that was your natural instinct.
Thanks. Yeah, but then like that sense of like empathy and compassion got buried with like shock and anger, because
Naturally.
the stuff, I'm like, anyway, I don't understand how people in his position live and do what they do, knowing people like me, and then refusing to give us a space to actually like communicate and like be honest and address, the harm and like problems with the ideology. Anyway, to me, there's something very uniquely twisted and gross about that.
Was your family and friend group in general supportive of you coming out, or was that you lost everybody across the board for the most part?
My friends were supportive at first, and then throughout the process, when I stopped tolerating heterosexist and homophobic qualifiers, some of those friends fell away and left. But other friends actually did work and changed their minds. So it was a mix for my friends. My extended family are all supportive. They're all allies. They all fully accept and love me as a gay man. My parents do not.
Mm,
My mom and dad are currently still not convinced I'm gay.
right. We've had several episodes on that conversation.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things about, in discussions we've had with people who've gone through deconstruction and religious trauma, church abuse, and cults, a big element that doesn't always make the headline when people are talking about it from the emotional stances is the loss of everything. Like the loss of connection in your friendships. There are people who are who make the decision. Again, you can empathize with them, but not condone it. And it's at different levels depending on where they fall in the organization. But choosing to stay in something that they know is toxic, even something that they don't even believe anymore. Because the thought of being completely outcast and alienated from your entire social group is far more scary than just dealing with day in, day out things that you haven't bought into, and even relationships that might be harmful, because starting from scratch and being completely alone in the world is far scarier.
For sure.
Which is why people say, and you probably hate hearing it, that you're brave, because it does take courage to blow your life up in order to make it better.
No, for sure. I agree. I don't hate hearing that. I think sometimes, I think it depends on who says it and why, but
Sure. Well, I know people are like, you're so brave. Like, I know a lot of people who are in one way or another a survivor are like, especially when it's like, I didn't really do anything. This happened to me. I just reacted in a way. But it's like, yeah, but you made the choice to react in a positive, productive way that is healthy. And you're no longer going to do damage to other people out there. Anyway, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so the conversations with the leaders in that environment were basically like, I remember the guy that I was directly reporting to and who was like a mentor for me in like the hierarchy. He basically told me like, Mike, gay people go to heaven. Like Jesus loves gay people. But the moment you start pursuing another man romantically or sexually, you're no longer following Jesus. And I was like, okay, that was like the moment that I finally, after years of gaslighting myself and continuously groveling at the feet of leaders in the Bethel world, because they have this whole worldview and like ideology of fathers and mothers, spiritual fathers and mothers, and then you're like the son or the daughter. So your proper position in the kingdom of heaven is to submit to their authority. So there's a very distinct power dynamic and hierarchy going on here that you're expected to embrace and like behave within, that actually removes autonomy and like your ability to represent yourself and confront. Anyway, so when he said that, I was like, oh, just years of meetings like this, not just with him, with several other higher ups that I had tried to like talk to about things. The meetings all went the same way. They would let you talk, and then they would tell you what you had to think or believe or do after that, and then you would move on. And your job at that point was to go and like follow through with what they told you to do. And so he was doing the same thing this time, and I was like, I will not do that here anymore. I cannot do that because of everything that I'd been through to get to that point. I was like, I can't just undo all that because of this. So I realized at that point, like, I can't stay here. I have to get out of here. I can't be at Bethel. I can't participate in this anymore. It was like the final like closure I needed to make the decision to walk away from this whole empire that I had built my career and world off of. And through that process, I found a mentor in Nashville, Tennessee, who was addressing the issues of queer people being discriminated against within the church. And he was addressing the theology and was very biblically educated and profound in his ability to articulate all of this beyond anyone I'd learned from or read or listened to. I was like, I need to talk to this man. So through the people I knew, somehow I got connected to him, and I flew out to Nashville and got coffee. And afterward, I talked to some friends at a coffee table and like broke down and sobbed, because for the first time in my life, I sat across the table from a cisgender, heterosexual, white male pastor who knew I was gay, and he didn't bat an eyelash. He didn't need me to change anything about that. He wasn't bothered by it. Like I had never experienced that in my life, and my body like did not know how to process that, and I didn't realize that was a thing until it happened. And I think there's something about this that I had to continue to embrace. You can learn information, you can get like access to knowledge, and that's helpful to some degree, but like until you experience a certain dynamic or environment or circumstance, your body doesn't really get it yet. And so I think that there was something really illuminating for me in that. And so I decided, if I'm going to go anywhere, I'm going to go to Nashville, because I want to get around this guy. Because I knew I was about to, it wasn't going to happen right away, but at some point I wanted to take the platform that I had and the content I was creating and the people who were following me, and I had to come out to them. I was like, I feel like I owe this. I know I don't quote unquote owe this to anyone, but these people have been following me for years. They trust me. They respect me. I'm like a spiritual guide and whatever in this arena. I feel in my conscience, I owe them this part of my process and conviction because it's important to me, and I don't want to not talk about this anymore. And so anyway, in 2022, I moved to Nashville to get around him to help me do that well. I'm like, please help me blow up my life the best way I can, like in the most responsible and like least destructive way I can. And so in 2022, I came out publicly, and it went horribly and beautifully. It depends on what we look at, right? But like I had never experienced that volume of direct, explicit rejection and accusation and demonization, and it was just, the language was wild, and the majority of them were evangelical Christians. It was shocking. And I'll say this and then we can land this plane. I found myself getting depressed after a couple of months of trying to navigate being out publicly and advocate for queer people and confront harmful theology. The amount of DMs and emails and comments and text messages I was getting daily for months of like, you're deceived, you're leading people astray, how dare you, you're an abomination, you're possessed, you're following the devil, you're a false prophet, like just over and over and over again. I mean, Leviticus, Romans, 1 Corinthians, just all this stuff repeatedly. It started having an effect on my mental health, and I remember waking up and realizing like I didn't want to wake up the next day. Not that I wasn't excited to wake up the next day, or when I would go to bed, like I just wasn't looking forward to waking up, and I was like, oh, this is not good. Like this is not a good sign. So I started like going to the gym. I started going on walks outside. I started talking. I mean, I was talking to friends about this process. I got a therapist. I started writing fiction. Like I just did all these things to try and help me cope. And those things were marginal. And so then I did this thing intuitively because I was like, I don't know what else to do. I started screenshotting the hate that I was getting from people and publishing it. And instead of trying to fight with the commenter or the person messaging me or try and persuade or change their mind, I just took the horrible things they were saying, made it public, and started teaching my audience, like, here's why this is homophobic or not true or unfounded or whatever. And I just used them as talking points for myself. Selfishly, it was like, I need to do something with this hate. I can't just keep leaving them unread. I can't just keep blocking people. I can't just keep deleting comments. Like, it is messing with me. I feel unsafe in the world. And so I needed to figure out how to push back and establish some sense of recourse. And so I started using their hate as material, as content, and people ate it up. They were appreciative. They like jumped in. It like provided opportunity for them to show support or defend me or whatever, and that in itself was really helpful. But ultimately it gave me something, dare I use the word, constructive to do with all this hate that I was getting, and I was finally having a system that I could put it somewhere, and it wasn't going to haunt me anymore. I got closure with each arrow that was shot at me, and that revolutionized my mental health. I like suddenly I was returning back to the optimistic, hopeful person that I had been my whole life. I was like, what? It was like the one thing that made the massive difference in that journey. And so I'm not saying I recommend people doing this, but like that, I needed to do that to survive, because the alternative was I just needed to stop creating content and just like turn off my Instagram. And I was like, oh, I can't let these haters win. Like, that's not an option. So what else can I do? And then it was that. Anyway, so all that to say, I took my content creating and my coaching and all the things I was writing, and I started directing it toward providing language and advocacy for the queer community and supporting queer people recovering from evangelicalism. And here we are.
not everybody has the reserved nature and the diplomacy that you illustrate through a lot of this. But it is important because you obviously have a gift for coaching and leadership, and that's what it wasn't just your mom pushing you into it, right? Like, you have this, you want to connect with other people, you wanna be a positive influence, you wanna be the light in people's lives. You've experienced God, which I especially in church, I don't think I've never experienced God in church. All my God experience has been outside of it, and to each their own, but I think that was a natural progression, and not only is it cathartic for you and helpful, it's hugely entertaining sometimes. It is so frustrating and makes my blood boil reading some of it. But I think it is helpful because people need to see, I think everyone, your main audience is people who need to see how to deal with it. But there's also the other people of like, oh, is that how I sound when I'm saying that? Like, the big saying right now is, there's no hate like Christian love. And if your page is anything, it's that. I mean, it illustrates not only that, but how to deal with it. And you at no point are telling other people "fuck you" and doing that. You do it cleverly, and we'll get into that in a moment. I actually sat and thought about this as I was writing the outline leading up to this episode. I've always really connected with your content, and I follow other people like John Pavlovitz and Pastor Brandon, some of these other folks, April Ajoy. But yours I connected with more than most people's. And I was sitting with why. And if you notice, when you start talking to anybody else who's gone through or is going through deconstruction, they can speak your language better than any other human on earth. Don't you feel like you make this strong bond with people that you just don't experience in other places?
For sure.
The trauma bond.
Yeah, for sure.
I've never been queer. However, what I realized in unpacking why I connected with it, it was because you and I have a common shared experience in the sense that we were in church, never feeling like we fully fit in the sense of if they knew the true us, they would not accept us. And we might not even accept ourselves. The fear of the retaliation of, from the mortals and the immortals. And then on top of all of it, this still underlying sense that there is God and I'm somehow connected to it. And none of this meshes. And so every time I read something about you or something you post or even just talking to you now, I just like all this stuff inside me is screaming because I'm like, yes, yes, yeah. Like I get it. It doesn't have to be the exact same experience, but it speaks to me so much in the sense that you asked me before the recording, like, who's my audience? Anybody who's gone through deconstruction or has gone through any kind of organized situation where it was cult-like and it had to deconstruct that, it speaks to them on so many levels, not just, because it was religion or because it was anti-gay or anything else. So
Yeah.
like I said at the beginning, it's unfortunately not a rare enough story, but it is such a human, horribly beautiful one that I think people of all walks of life can connect with.
Thank you. Yeah. Unfortunately. Yeah.
This happens all the time and it makes my skin crawl. So there was a recent reel. Don Lemon goes around and interviews people. He's talking to this guy and the guy's like, "Oh, you're Don Lemon, right?" And Don's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Yeah, well, I don't agree with you because you're gay." Don's like, "Okay." And he's like, "Well," and the guy goes on to say, "Well, I'm a Christian and that's a sin." And Don is just like being very cordial. And the guy's like, "But we're all sinners. So like, I can't judge you more than the next." And I can tell the guy was trying to stretch himself to be like, "Look, I don't hate you." And some people might have looked at that and said, "Oh, that guy was being fair." But I hate that. The thing that bothers me is the priorities and the hierarchy of sins, right? Because they're not calling out other things. They're not sitting at the bar drinking with their buddy and the buddy's had too much and they go, "What you're doing right now is sinful. That's gluttony. And you're intoxicating yourself and your body is a vessel." They're not doing that. they're calling out homosexuality and they're calling out abortion. That bothers me on so many levels because, and I'm going to use the word sin here for a moment as someone's opinion of sin. If you wore the sin that you believe is a sin on the inside that you're the most ashamed of on the outside, like a proud gay person would, you would hate yourself so much. I think there's some level of jealousy there because you are living in a truth. And if they let the skeletons out of their closet, they wouldn't be allowed in their own church. But what are your thoughts on that dynamic of, well, you're a sinner, but we're all sinners, but also that's not okay?
Oh God, we don't have time for this. Okay. That's a great question. The doctrine of sin, original sin, and how that whole thing evolves and then erodes the human being's sense of self and value and whatever. In and of itself, I think is so toxic. And then, of course, when we start bringing in the queer community and how inordinately we are targeted and discriminated against and scapegoated more than other quote unquote sins. The thing is, like, murder, I'm like, I don't really use the word sin anymore. I don't really grab onto that concept as something constructive or helpful. But if I were to do that, murder obviously to me is like, that's a sin. We shouldn't do that. Stealing from other people, we probably shouldn't do that. Right? When we start talking about gay people, I have people that show up in my comments to defend me and they say, like, hey, what about your sin? And I'm like, whoa, let's just be very clear. Me being gay is not a sin. This is not the same conversation. So we're not comparing my attraction to this person's propensity to harm other people. Like, those are not the same thing. That's a completely different conversation. And that sometimes does get lost. But when it comes to we're all sinners, I think the thing that bothers me more than targeting gay people in this is the statement we're all sinners actually gets weaponized by the people who uphold this worldview, and they use that to bypass or ignore the harm that certain people are causing because everyone's a sinner. And like I see that continuously used to defend and justify Trump. Like, he continuously gets excused by evangelicals because nobody's perfect. No leader is perfect, but this man is chosen by God. He's like David. Just like, it's wild, the comparisons that get made.
And then you ask them, well, then wasn't Obama then also chosen by God? And the the lack of critical thinking is what this is all about, right? The lack of logic. When you divorce logic from spirituality, you get religion. And that it's just such a huge problem. But that has to bother you so much because I know that is such a common thing with evangelicals and modern Christian nationalism where we're at.
Yeah, for sure. It does. It is so upsetting because to me, it's like a foundational tenet that enables harmful, quote unquote, logic. It's not logic, but the way that they reason themselves into these irrational and deeply problematic opinions is rooted in this everyone's a sinner idea.
Yeah.
And that somehow then excuses and justifies a lot of other subsequent sins.
Yeah.
And they won't see that. It doesn't matter how much you explain and like point out the cause and effect and provide literal examples. Like, none of that registers as viable for them to examine their own problematic beliefs. They just know, I'm better than you, you're bad.
Yeah. Because the hierarchy of sin is directly tied to the hierarchy of class, sex, gender, race, sexuality, everything.
But that's all too woke to talk about.
Yeah, no, we don't have enough time in this world to get into all of that. So instead, what I'd like to do is something more entertaining for the audience. Let's dig into Mike's DMs.
Oh my God.
Okay, we're going to share some of the conversations, and they range across the board. So we'll share the conversation, and then we'll kind of get Mike's take on each one.
These are the hate comments or DMs that I get that I will screenshot and use as teaching opportunities, or more just to showcase an expose of this is how people behave today. What he's going to read the bad guy, and then I'm going to read me, right? Is that the setup, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here we go. Mike, God intended for marriage to be between a man and a woman.
James, did you mean to say that here specifically?
Yes, because I'm stating theology from the Bible. Adam and Eve, Mike, not Adam and Steve. This one's short and sweet. Why'd you share this one?
I'm like, it's weird to me that people still say that. Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, just feels so ignorant. And I'm like, you should be embarrassed to be like saying that out loud as a reason to justify demonizing people. But this, I mean, it still happens. So one, I want to just demonstrate like, hey, this is still a thing. This is still like informing people's worldview. And then also just like how random this stuff can be. Like, why is he coming to this post and specifically tagging me and saying that? I'm like, the post, I don't remember what post it was, but the thing that I posted that he commented on this, it wasn't even about gay marriage or gay people. So it was just so random that he said that. So I was like, why are you saying that here? Like, and so to me, I was just kind of sharing like this stuff often, I think, depicts the projection that evangelicals have to practice in order to maintain the psychosis of these really damaging beliefs that evangelicalism upholds. They can't help but outsource the psychosis onto the world around them and other people and project their unresolved issues onto what they feel justified in condemning. And this felt like a case in point. Like, this just happens all the time. It looks like this. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway.
Dare I say, I suspect some of these commenters are jealous of your current status and lifestyle.
I think that's probably true. I do.
Not all of them, but some.
Not all of them, but yeah. I do think that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's another one. I'm sorry. I hate to laugh, but it is like so unwarrantedly mean and ridiculous. This is like mean tweets. Here we go. You are a false prophet and you're misleading many people. Why are you teaching heresy to so many people? Do you hate Jesus?
I'm a false prophet? Says who?
The Bible. If you're teaching stuff that's biblically untrue and standing behind the Bible to say it, then you are a false prophet and a heretic.
What am I teaching that is biblically untrue?
That homosexuality is biblically okay and that it's not a sin.
What research have you done on the subject?
A good amount. What research have you done on the subject?
A good amount.
Clearly not if you're speaking heresy.
Based on how you're approaching this, I'm assuming we have a different definition of the word research.
Yeah. He of course has to write biblically so many times, which is the hardest word for me to say. Yeah, I go biblically and you go by the worldview, apparently.
So who told you to message me and tell me I'm a false prophet? Where does that come from?
I said that because from the looks of it and what you say online, you speak heresy while trying to inform people about stuff, saying it's backed biblically, but you're lying. Homosexuality is a sin in God's eyes.
Right. I understand you think that. What compels you to message me and tell me you think that?
Because I think it's evil and horrible how you are misleading people.
You think me telling people gay people are deserving of dignity and inclusion is evil?
No, but when you use the Bible to justify it, that's just what makes it evil. God talks about this. I have many gay family members and I love them, which bullshit that this guy has any gay family members, but, or at least that he's nice to them.
Yeah.
I have many gay family members and I love them, but I will not support sin.
Where do I use the Bible to justify sin?
Never mind. I can't even see where you could try to use the Bible to justify it. But you said seeing someone as sinful because of their sexual orientation is faithless and not Christ-like, but there's a huge difference between loving a person and supporting their sin.
How do you define the word gay?
Homosexual.
And you think homosexuals shouldn't exist?
Nope, never said that. Again, don't put words in my mouth. I love my homosexual brothers and sisters, but I just hope that they will turn to Jesus and turn away from their sinful lifestyle. I think homosexuality shouldn't exist, but it always will because the world is filled with sin.
It sounds like you think homosexual is a choice.
For the most part, it is, but people are too weak to overtake their temptation. I know people who were homosexual but turned to Christ, and he took that lust for the same gender from them because they love God more than their sin.
Have you ever been sexually or romantically attracted to another man before?
Before I found Christ, I was having tons of weird thoughts about it from the devil, and I was questioning it, but luckily, I found God before I made a bad decision.
So gay.
Huh? Yes, there were gay thoughts, but I was not saved by Christ at the time.
And now you don't experience attraction to men anymore?
Not at all. It's been so long, and God has done so much in my life.
What's your argument? You think the Bible says being gay is a sin, so therefore gay people aren't real?
Brother, what? That makes zero sense.
You said you think being gay is a choice and that people can just choose to not be gay. I agree. That makes zero sense.
Well, if they choose God, he will take that sinful lust away from them. I agree that without God, being gay may not be a choice because of lack of self-control or impulse to take those evil thoughts and transform you.
In my experience, Jesus takes the evil thoughts of hating yourself away, and he forgives you for using the Bible and religion to demonize a very normal, natural part of being human.
No, that's actual heresy, brother. Be careful with that. If you try and excuse your homosexuality and act like that and live a Christian lifestyle, that is lukewarmness and will not stand with Christ. Obviously, people will have slip-ups. Nobody is perfect, but you need to follow Jesus and he will take away the sinful desires.
Yeah, I just told you the sinful desires Jesus takes away is not someone's natural sexual orientation. It's demonizing people based on bad theology and shoddy exegesis. You're the one who should be careful.
Yeah, that's just false. I don't know how you're so confident yet so wrong. Natural sexual orientation is heterosexuality, not homosexuality. That is from Satan.
That's your argument? It's from Satan? Science, psychology, the medical field, and academia are all wrong about human sexuality. It's just Satan?
No, there are satanic aspects in all of those, but none of those are directly satanic. But homosexuality is from Satan due to the fact that it is against God.
You think homosexuality is against God because you think the Bible says so. The Bible also supports a geocentric model of the universe and flat Earth. Do you think the Earth is flat and that the sun orbits it?
Nope. That is a verse widely taken out of context. While God is very clear on homosexuality being sin, Thag wasn't the gotcha moment you thought you had. And yes, the Bible does say so. I don't just think it says so.
It's not one verse. It's throughout the Bible. The biblical authors thought the Earth was flat.
Okay, bud.
Ha.
Literally, no good points. So you bring up something completely different. Obviously, they thought the earth was flat because that was widespread belief in the day. Not like God is going to explain science to you. Ha! Gotta find it out.
Did you read what you just wrote?
Yes. Ha! Do you not understand? Because if not, I probably shouldn't even be arguing with you because you must be brain dead.
Obviously, you're not ready yet, but if/when you want to face your real life, the one God gave you, my coaching is available.
I'm straight. Which I think he was saying I'm straight to try to convince himself.
And I gave him a double thumbs up.
God bless, brother. If you really want to follow God wholeheartedly and have any questions, let me know.
Cool. Thanks for stopping by. God, that was a lot.
That was a lot. And how did I didn't look at the timestamps. Did that all take place in one conversation or was that like back and forth over?
It was probably a 24-hour period.
Thoughts?
Anybody reading this on the outside looking in, you're like, okay, this guy is contradicting himself multiple like throughout. And he's obviously a closeted gay/bisexual person, and he has dealt with his unwanted sexual attraction by shoving it deep down and again projecting onto other people how he thinks they need to be living or what they can't be doing. And it's sad when I see the energy. I'm like, how is this person still trying to fight with me? I try to give them like outs and like, what are we doing? And then when they continue to persist and there's this energizing like persistence, I'm like, okay, something else is going on. So that's when I was like, hey, so do you like men? Is that why this is still like a subject here? And then he like weirdly admits, like, yeah, I used to. I'm like, okay.
Almost like you were saying it as a dig, right? Because that's how he sees it. But the fact that you called it out and caught it is hilariously awful. The whole thing. I mean, it was almost hard to read because I'm like laughing because it's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
For you to be preaching God and hate simultaneously, so hardcore. This one is important. Will you just play your mom for a moment?
Okay, got it.
Mom, I keep seeing your posts on Facebook about Trump, and I think I'm going to need to block you there. I don't want to see my mom celebrate a sexual predator, homophobe, and white supremacist on my social media. I don't tolerate that from anyone I follow, and I don't want to do it with you. You raised me to value justice and hold our leaders to a standard of even higher morals than we hold for ourselves, no matter how wealthy or powerful they are. I don't get how you got here or how you can celebrate him, and I don't want to keep seeing it.
Thank you for letting me know that you're blocking me. We have to agree to disagree at this time. I'm sorry for how misinformed you truly are.
This is its own episode, but in short form, there's a lot of people, myself included, who've had strained and broken relationships due to our current climate. And there is no one right way to deal with it because every human is a different context. You know, if your parents are willing to love you despite something and are willing to put in the effort, I think it's worth doing. And not just parent, any strong relationship. But the agree to disagree, I'm no longer willing to agree to disagree. I just disagree. How's your sister handling this now?
Oh, I think ultimately the result of this ongoing conflict is limited contact. My mom doesn't get to see/talk to her or her grandkids often anymore, which is so sad for me to watch. But I get it, and I support my sister in having to make the decision she needs to take care of herself and her family. I just feel really sad. I think my mom has established and invested in a whole trajectory where she's going to be losing a lot of things over the next several years, and it's painful to watch. The empathy is there, and also like I've had to do so much work to try and make sense of my mom's behavior and her attitude and how she's shown up and not shown up for years. And yeah, so the result has been it's very limited contact.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking, but there's a lot of us going through that right now. Okay, last one we'll do because this one is also disturbing.
Oh God, I remember this person's face. Let's do it.
Sorry. If you would know about Christianity, you wouldn't be gay.
What do you think I don't know?
Yeah, obviously. Spreading the wrong gospel is false.
So if I knew the right gospel, I'd stop being gay?
I'm sorry, man. I love this part. 3, Moses 20, verse 13. Being homosexual isn't just sexuality, it's an illness.
What is Moses 2013?
I thought you were a pastor. I mean pastor. If a man lies with a male as a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood is upon them. 3 Moses 20:13.
Ah, the third book of Moses. So what should I do?
Third book.
I mean, I was trying to figure out what she was talking about. And I was like, oh, wait, this is just a cultural difference.
Stop being gay. But if you don't want to stop being gay, then you should stop spreading the false gospel. That's a sin, bro. Why did God make Adam and Eve? Think, bro. Think.
If I could just think hard enough.
I'm sorry. Your responses are fucking amazing. Okay. This world is lost because of people just like you. Stop being Christian then if you can't live a life for God. Being gay is satanic, and you know that. You just want to spread the wrong gospel.
Who told you being gay is satanic? I don't know that.
Because being gay isn't Christian, then it's obviously satanic. You know that. You just want to spread the wrong gospel.
What do you think my goal is with this wrong gospel?
To make people believe wrong things and lead them to hell.
And what do I get out of getting them to hell, do you think?
Satan's goal was also to bring as many people to hell as possible so he wouldn't suffer alone. And that's your goal too, right?
Yeah, I was worried that I was going to suffer alone, so I decided to be gay and bring as many people to hell with me as I could.
Ha ha ha, I knew it. I'll post it everywhere, and my friend will find your IP, and I'll publish your address. Again, no hate like Christian love.
Yeah.
Not only does God love you, but you're a sinner and you shouldn't be preaching this. I'm going to track you down and expose you. But like, you already are out as all of these things. So your IP address to do what?
I don't know. I mean, rationality just doesn't, you have to like learn how to, I've done this enough that I have to shift into a different mode and like accept that rationality is not a part of the conversation. Sometimes I try to introduce it, but it doesn't go well typically. I don't really know. I don't know. It's like hard to figure out sometimes where people are coming from. My dream is one of these days, one of these homophobes will take me up on my offer and work with me and like change their mind, would be able to accept themselves and like love themselves and come out. Like, I think that would be really cool. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but Matt, literally no one has ever asked me to do that before. So that was a really fun surprise and I enjoyed it. It was fun. Thanks for doing that.
We didn't go through all of them. There were some messages where I feel like at least on a logic level, you got through to some of these people, some of the ones that you've shared, but not enough where you're getting through to them on an empathy level, on a level of just basic human decency and, again, critical thinking. So before I ask my last question, because I know you have to get going here, first of all, thank you so much for doing this today. And thank you so much for reading through those things. First of all, I've read all of these things over time just as a follower. Getting to read them live with you there's something magical in the room. Where are you at now with your spirituality? I think that's part of the beautiful piece of your evolution and story is understandably so. And as you get feedback from other people who've been ousted because of sexuality or something else, there's this everything that is God that I know to be God, and religion and faith and spirituality has no place for me. And that's an understandable take that a lot of people who went through this kind of trauma, any kind of religious trauma take. And I always tell them, I get it. But like God is everything everywhere all the time. And I get if you don't want to call it that. I didn't want to call it that for a long time. But like God's in all of us. And where are you at with your faith? I'm not asking you to make a proclamation, but you're still using your voice. And there's such a Christ-like, the core of Christ, not biblical, not biblically Christ-like. No, there is a beautiful Christ-like heart and voice in what you do. Whether or not you still think of Christ or Christianity as the core, like where are you at with all of that?
Thanks for saying that. That's really kind. Yeah, the short version of this, I feel wary because like I'm going to say something and then people will have all kinds of options to assume that may or may not be true, but I'll try. When you say there's a Christ-like component to my voice, that I take that as a compliment. In that I have some kind of belief value that there is a spark of divinity in everyone that we could call Christ. And I'm fine with that. I don't need to call it Christ. I don't need anybody to call anything in particular anymore. But I do think that, like, as you said, God is everywhere and everything. And like all of this is God expressing themselves. I think that's true. And I'm comfortable using the word God. I don't need people to use God. We can call it the universe or source, energy, I don't know, whatever. There's lots of other alternatives and I'm like fine with that. But I do believe there's something more going on here than just a random selection of cells and impersonal matter clashing and fumbling through its own lack of consciousness existence. I don't think that's true. Underneath all this, I do believe that love is a distinct component to whatever that energy is comprised of. I do think that there's like a divine, dare I use the word love, at the source of the existence we're experiencing. And that's because of the experiences that I've had. There are definitely aspects of Christianity I still value. I think partially because that's like my first language, right, to spirituality and morality. It came through Christianity. But the other part is just as I've deconstructed and then continued to push through and studying and paying attention and like working through stuff, I can pick up some things in Christianity that I still value without triggering myself because of all the things that I hate and like am opposed to and where it was hurt by in quote unquote Christianity. So there are a lot of Christianities in human history and currently right now, right? So when someone says they're a Christian, there are lots of different versions of that they could mean. So I still identify as a loose Christian at this point. I'm a loose Christian. That's the term that I feel most comfortable. I've not heard that anywhere. I don't think it's like dignified, but I'm a Christian with some people, or like in some people's definition. And then for some people, I am happily not a Christian. I am no longer a Christian, if, depending on who's asking, because that word, that label, that identity carries so many different iterations and meanings. But when it comes to my spirituality, like I do find value from Christianity in like specifically Jesus in the teachings of loving not just your neighbors, but loving your enemies. I hate that. I find it so difficult and upsetting. And my audience hates it more than I do. Like whenever I do propose like loving the people you don't understand or who are trying to hurt you, people in my audience get very angry. I've lost hundreds of followers over nonviolent posts that I make. But I do think Jesus's approach of nonviolence is really important. I think forgiveness is a really beautiful, powerful, important value that is lost. I don't see it a lot on the left. I don't see that as a huge like priority. And rightfully so. I get it, but I don't think it's a good idea to get rid of it. I think the invitation to and like assertion that redemption is on the table, I think that's really beautiful and important. So like there are things in Christianity that I learned that have shaped my ethics that I still hold deeply as important. And then there's so many the longer list would just be all the things I don't believe anymore. But yeah, I think that there's a Christ in everyone, and that there's a Christ in us that can recognize that, and that invites us into this higher version of ourselves that allows us to make choices that is beyond our nervous system and beyond our neuro composition, right? And it's beyond our experience and trauma. Like we are capable of more. I think that's true. And spirituality is like the thing I think that's available to us that allows us to reach for that. And that gives it permission to exist. And I think it does exist.
I agree with everything you just said, and I'm not agreeing to agree. I think it's a natural, organic way to go through it where you don't quite know what to call it, but that's what makes it great. Because you can't label it, you can't define it, you can't put it in a box. That's what modern Christianity has done, and it's toxic. Mm-hmm. I saw a video recently. It was something that I was talking with one of my trans friends, but this guy said it so perfectly and succinctly. Somebody tried to do a got you interview, and this guy goes, actually, I think trans people, if anything, are proof that there is God. Like, what? And he goes, because if you believe in the Christian Bible and you're talking about souls, like we don't have gender outside of this and we're just in a vessel. So wouldn't it make sense that a more feminine soul got put in a masculine framework? He's like, I think it's just proof that there is God. If anything, Christians should be fighting for it. And you're like,
nice. I love it.
Amen, brother. Amen.
Yeah.
All right. I'd like to ask a final question that is kind of off topic, but random. Just to throw you for a loop. Here we go. If you could go back in time and tell Christ one thing that could possibly change the trajectory of his movement, what would it be?
Don't let Paul touch your words.
That is almost too smart for most people, but God, that's so good.
Yeah, people who hate that, like, listen, do some research. People who get it, I'm like, right, like, wouldn't that be so helpful? But yeah, I would say that to Jesus. Please somehow prevent this from happening.
All right, plug the hell out of everything and everywhere people can go to hear the words of Mike and the comedy of Mike and his interactions with loving Christians.
Nice, thanks. Okay, so I think the best place to follow me is Instagram. I'm the most active and prolific there. I'm the most engaged with my audience on Instagram. So I think following me there is the best place. So at Mike Maeshiro. If you want to see the work that I do, the groups that I host, the coaching that I do, the random workshops and book clubs that I host, which I do regularly, MikeMaeshiro.com has all of that. And then also I write on Substack. So I have a paid subscriber Substack where people, are subscribed there, and I write every week on subjects. I've been doing an unofficial series on deconstruction and like what happens after that, and kind of sharing some of my own process and that currently. But like I've been doing it for years. I wrote my whole coming out story for 2 years on Substack, and all of that is backlogged for people who are subscribed. They can go read all of that. Anyway, so Substack is a great place to check out my longer form communication. And then I have a podcast, Confessions of a Reformer. I publish once a month now, so it's not as often as I used to, but I'll have guests on there to talk about things. Yeah. And then I'm on Facebook and YouTube and TikTok, but Instagram is probably the best place.
For anybody going through the deconstruction process right now, in the simplest form possible, what words would you like to share with them?
Be gentle with yourself. Treat it like a ladder. Don't just jump off. Baby steps. Pull the ideas apart step by step. Don't just like throw yourself headlong, because you can actually hurt yourself psychologically. It's a lot, depending on how deeply entrenched you were and how invested you were in your religious upbringing. For you to lose hell, eternity, Jesus, the Bible, whatever, right away, it could be detrimental. It could actually have like really harmful effects on you. So I would say take it one rung at a time. Baby steps, pull it apart, give yourself space and time and process. Talk to people. Do not do it alone. Don't do it in an echo chamber or isolated. Like, have people in your process you can like share things with. You can ask questions. They can challenge you. They can support you. They can validate. Like, you need that. It's a relational experience. You didn't just like wake up one day indoctrinated. You were nurtured into that. So nurture your way out of that. And then with all that in place, go hard, hit the stuff, interrogate your beliefs. If there is harm coming out of what you believe, if there are people who are marginalized by what you believe, if they are if you create outcasts and like subcategories because of your beliefs, they need to be pulled apart. You have some decolonizing and probably some supremacy and racism built in there. Go hard at that stuff. There are so many great resources out there. If you have any questions, you can DM me. I'll send you a lot of resources, like books to read or whatever, but like address those things. There's so much expansion and evolution to experience now. Don't limit yourself to a sad box that was imposed on you by people who decided things for you and about you before you were even born. Like, you can get beyond that. I would say that.
We just went there. Now you can go to thegoingtherepodcast.com for links to all the podcast platforms, our socials, and of course, YouTube. While you're at it, give us a rating, share with a friend, and subscribe.
This podcast is brought to you in part by its host and Frame One Media, in association with Joe Cowley and Bobby Thomas.